The Alanis Business Academy podcast is sponsored by Audible.com, provider of over 150,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including business and periodicals. Get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at alanisbusinessacademy.com/audible.
Mo Williams will throw in. Gets it to LeBron for three for the win. Yes! LeBron James at the buzzer! Bryant looking. Artest, that's a three. Bang! Lakers by 6 with a minute to play.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan, open. Chicago with the lead.
The National Basketball Association, or NBA, is one of the most valuable sports organizations in the world. The NBA itself produces just under $5 billion in revenue annually, and the average NBA franchise is worth an estimated $634 million. Star players earn anywhere from $15 to $30 million in a single season, and networks pay upwards of $500 million per year just for the rights to televise NBA games. The continued success of the NBA is heavily influenced by the caliber of athletes that enter each year's NBA draft, an event where prospective NBA players enter their name into a pool of athletes in hopes of being selected by an NBA team. The stakes are certainly high, as no organization wants to throw away a draft pick or miss out on the next Michael Jordan, so a great deal of time and effort is spent trying to evaluate each player and gauge their chances of succeeding in the NBA. But what would happen if a player turned out not to be a star? The investment of a first-round pick, even the first 2 rounds, comes with some pretty high expectations. How long would it be before an underperforming player is released and the team cuts its losses? Surely something like draft position doesn't have an influence on player tenure in the NBA. Or does it?
With the first pick in the 2007 NBA Draft, the Portland Trail Blazers select Greg Oden from Ohio State University.
That's David Stern, former commissioner of the NBA, announcing the first pick of the 2007 NBA Draft. With that pick, the Portland Trail Blazers selected Greg Oden, a 7-foot, 250-pound center from Ohio State University. Although he played only 1 season at the collegiate level, Oden averaged just over 15 points and approximately 10 rebounds per game as a freshman. He also led Ohio State to the national championship game, where he scored 25 points and grabbed 12 rebounds in a loss to Florida. Not only was Oden viewed as arguably the best player in the draft, but he was also seen as the best center to come out of the draft since current NBA Hall of Famer Patrick Ewing. Leading up to the draft, here's what analysts had to say about Oden.
Because when you talk about Greg Oden, he's a once-in-a-lifetime type of a talent. And if they somehow can get this guy, they return to glory and relevance. Without him, they're going to be mired in mediocrity.
Fast forward to present time. At the time of this recording, Oden is playing in the NBA Finals for his first NBA title. It would seem as though the analysts got it right, and the Portland Trail Blazers made a good personnel move and wisely spent that coveted first draft pick. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. Although Oden is technically on a roster of a team playing in the NBA Finals, he isn't playing for the Portland Trail Blazers. He's playing for the Miami Heat. And he isn't the dominant player that many predicted. In fact, Oden played only 1 minute in Miami's 107-86 loss to the San Antonio Spurs in Game 4, drawing only a personal foul with no points, rebounds, or anything else for that matter. But what does a story about one player's unrealized potential relate to the sunk cost fallacy? A sunk cost represents a cost that has already been incurred in some way and thus cannot be recovered. It's commonly expressed as throwing good money after bad. Although we commonly consider money when viewing sunk costs, they can also represent other costs like time and effort. The problem with a sunk cost is the initial investment of time, effort, and money tends to affect our decision-making. Take something like choosing whether or not to repair a vehicle, for example. The primary factor of whether or not a vehicle should be repaired is the prospect of it continuing to run in the future. But is that what we consider? Or do we consider the $2,000 that we just paid for a rebuilt transmission? Although that $2,000 represents a very real expense, it constitutes a sunk cost. It's already been paid, and we can't recover the cost in any way. So really, we should look at this new decision separately and base it solely on the facts specific to this repair. What if you are currently enrolled at a college or university and you discover that you actually dislike your field of study? You've taken a few courses required for your degree, and you find out that it just isn't as interesting as you originally thought. You're 2 semesters away from being able to graduate. Should you continue? You've put in at least 3 years of time, effort, and not to mention skyrocketing tuition to get to this point. You also passed on a lot of opportunities to place yourself in a position to earn a college degree. But is that what really matters? Can you get back the time, effort, and money invested? That's the sunk cost fallacy. Although we would like to think that our decisions are made in a rational manner, we frequently become influenced by those initial investments that cause us to stay committed to an original decision, even when that decision may not be the best use of our time, effort, and money. Coming up next on the Alanis Business Academy podcast, we look into the impact of draft order on playing time in the NBA. Let's go back to the NBA. In 1995, Barry Staw and Ha Huang at the University of California at Berkeley looked into the impact that draft position had on the playing time and actual survival of players in the NBA. Now, one would argue that surely playing time is a result of on-the-court productivity, like scoring more points per game, for example. And that would certainly be the most logical conclusion. However, from what we know about human decision-making, sometimes we make decisions irrationally. To determine the impact of draft order on playing time, data of 241 players drafted between 1980 and 1986 was evaluated. To reduce the impact of other variables, Staw and Huang controlled for productivity, injuries, and even position. So, did draft position matter? It did quite a bit, in fact. When a player was drafted actually had a bigger impact on playing time than on-the-court performance, the presence of injuries, and even whether or not the player was traded. In fact, every one position decrease in draft order resulted in an additional 23 minutes of playing time during the second year. So someone selected in the first round would play over 500 minutes more their second year simply due to their draft position. Looking at player survival in the NBA, players selected in the first round stayed in the NBA approximately 3.3 years longer than those selected in the second round. So if productivity isn't driving the increase in minutes played and survival, then what is? To answer that question, let's look at the sunk costs of an NBA first-round draft pick. First-round draft picks receive a salary that is dictated by the order they are drafted, with the majority of the first round earning at least $1 million their first year. And it's common for players to be signed for multi-year deals. In addition to the out-of-pocket costs, teams spend time developing draftees in hopes they will mature into high performers. First-round draft picks are also commonly stars in college, so there would be a financial incentive to play athletes fans actually want to see. And there's also the difficulty of acknowledging failure.
My reaction when I heard this is just a downer. Just a downer. You know it's a downer for the Portland Trail Blazers because they are so excited that they got this player who looks like the once every generation player. Like, Shaq's getting old. He's going to move aside fairly soon in a few years. And then you get the next great big player who can transform you. And now you're not going to see him in his very first season.
Prior to the start of the NBA season, Greg Oden underwent microfracture surgery on his right knee. He would miss the entire season. Oden would recover, coming back to average just under 9 points and pull down 8 rebounds per game in his first official year. Not exactly the dominant force that analysts predicted, but still solid numbers in the NBA. The start of his second year looked promising. He was averaging just over 11 points and 8 rebounds per game when the unthinkable happened.
A great part of their offense is getting baskets before you get set up on defense.
Scola gives Brooks the pick. Greg went down and his knee is... Holy cow, Portland doesn't need this.
Oden fractured his left patella while defending Houston Rockets point guard Aaron Brooks on a drive to the basket. He would miss the remainder of the season. Oden wouldn't play again in a Trailblazer uniform, sustaining a variety of other injuries and undergoing 2 additional microfracture surgeries. On March 15, 2012, Oden was finally waived by the Portland Trailblazers, almost 5 years after he was drafted and playing in only 82 regular season games during that period. Now, it's easy to point out after the fact that the Trailblazers may have been influenced by the significance of their sunk costs. It's more difficult to realize it as it's happening. But at some point, just as the Trailblazers did on March 15th, 2012, you have to throw in the towel. So what if Greg Oden's future didn't play out like millions had anticipated? And so what if the Portland Trailblazers were out the millions of dollars they spent hoping that their initial investment would pay off? There's uncertainty in every hiring decision, so why should the NBA be any different? But is there another cost? Possibly a cost of lost opportunity.
With the second pick in the 2007 NBA draft, the Seattle Supersonics select Kevin Durant from the University of Texas.
With the second pick of the 2007 NBA draft, the Seattle Supersonics, who are now the Oklahoma City Thunder, selected a freshman from the University of Texas by the name of Kevin Durant. Did Durant's future play out in a similar fashion to Oden's? 2 careers in the NBA couldn't be more opposite. During his 7-year career thus far, Durant is averaging just over 27 points per game, almost 7 rebounds per game, and won the NBA's Most Valuable Player award this last year. In addition, he holds 5 NBA All-Star selections, is an Olympic gold medalist, and led the Thunder to the NBA Finals a few seasons ago. So if the sunk costs don't get you, the opportunity costs will. Hey, podcast listeners, thank you for listening to this episode titled The Sunk Cost Fallacy. You can find additional episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and AlanisBusinessAcademy.com. Also, don't forget to check out new content from Alanis Business Academy available on Curious.com.
The Alanis Business Academy podcast is produced by Matthew Alanis. If you want more, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or go to AlanisBusinessAcademy.com for access to video content, quizzes, and more.